Okay, we're going to be doing Daf Lamed Hey in the Bavli. We'll start with a very short section of the Yerushalmi, or not super short, but anyway, we'll start with the Yerushalmi. Perek Daled Halacha Vav. Dinim Mamanis, Gomin Bo B'Yom, Ben L'Schus Ben L'Chova, V'Dinim Nefashos, Gomin Bo B'Yom L'Schus, V'Yom Shalach Rev L'Chova. Fikach Ein Danim Lo Be'erev Shabbos V'Lo Be'erev Yom Tov. Okay, so monetary cases you can finish on the same day. Whereas capital crimes, you have to at least to halanas adin, sleep on it. So you have to at least wait till the next day to find the person guilty, and therefore you can't start Erev Shabbos or Erev Yom Tov because you won't be able to continue on the immediate next day. So the question is why you can't wait a day and have the finish the judgment on Sunday. The Gemara will discuss. Let's look at the Yerushalmi. Tani, so we saw this already in the Bavli earlier. The witness himself cannot argue on behalf for the person's innocence or guilt. Nina Holan, where do you know this from? A witness cannot respond against the person to put him to death. And reading this not as just about edus, but also as about arguing on the person's behalf. Now, that says that you can't do it to argue to put him to death. I mean, now, how do you know you can't even argue for his innocence, which is mitigating your own testimony? So again, it's a very questionable what this next line is. The extra word "who" does it mean that the defendant can't argue for himself, but the defendant actually can argue for himself? We already said the issue about zechut and chova. So the Pnei Moshe says the first pasuk, the first point showed that he can't argue lamut to strengthen his testimony and to put the guy to death. And now it's saying, how do you know that the witness can't argue in the guy's defense? So Talmud Lomar, v'hu lo ya'aneh, the who again seems extra, so it seems doing something with the extra who here. Anyway, lo ya'aneh b'nefesh lamut. What does that prove? So the way they explain it, it's not you can't say to put the nefesh to death, but you can't, lo ya'aneh, you can't have any say b'nefesh lamut when it's an issue of someone's death. You can't have any say whether to defend him or to strengthen the argument of his guilt. Reish Lakish says, actually, if you argue on his behalf, that is about a matter of death. Why? Sometimes you see yourself turning into an eid zomein. So then you try to argue on the person's behalf, because but if the person never has the judgment passed against him, you won't become an eid zomein. So this is the argument that we saw in the Bavli, that you're nogea be'edus. You're nogea be'edus to argue that he's committed the crime, because then you're strengthening your edus, and you're nogea be'edus to say he's innocent, because then you're protecting yourself against being an eid zomein. Okay, now back to the point of the Mishnah. How do you know that you need to be juxtaposed? You can't have a break of a day. So before answering that question, meaning how come you can't do it Erev Shabbos? The Yerushalmi is first going to digress for a moment. There's a teaching in the name of Chizkiah that you can't even judge monetary cases Erev Shabbos, presumably because it'll just get in the way of your preparing for Shabbos. So the Gemara says, "V'adamas nisa pliga," but our Mishnah argues on this. The capital crimes you can't do an Erev Shabbos, but hadine mamanis danim, but civil crimes you can. So the Gemara says, "V'tani Rabbi Chia came." Rabbi Chia also teaches a brayso exactly that way. Danim dinim mamanis be'erev Shabbos, danim dinim nefashos be'erev Shabbos. Monetary crimes can be on Erev Shabbos, not capital crimes, monetary cases. So how could you, Rabbi Chizkiah, say you don't do monetary cases on Erev Shabbos? So Amar kan lahalacha kan lamaaseh. One is theoretical, one is practical. Okay, sometimes you'll have a tshuva that will say lahalacha v'lo lamaaseh, theoretical debate of what the law should be, but I'm not actually saying it as a practical rule. So theoretically, lahalacha, you can do monetary cases on Erev Shabbos. That's the right to halacha. But practically, we don't do it on Erev Shabbos because we want to give people time to prepare for Shabbos. But yeah, but if you did do it, it still would be valid. Okay. So now we go on. Okay. Now we're getting back to why not do din nefashos on Erev Shabbos. Why not do it on Erev Shabbos and finalize the judgment on Shabbos? So we won't interrupt the deliberations, but we'll wait to actually execute him till Sunday. Now, if you say that, you are having the sun set on his din. It's inui din. After you said he is liable for the death penalty, you can't wait till the next day to execute him. Rish Lakish says, I don't understand. Why can't you just actually execute him on Shabbos and finish the deliberations? Now, what's the argument to do it? Avoda overrides Shabbos. You do avoda in the Beis Hamikdash. Ritzichas mitzvah doche ota. Executing somebody, ritzichas mitzvah, is very funny because the word ritzicha we normally say is murder, which is a crime. You should say maybe harigas mitzvah. It's very funny it uses that phrase ritzicha. Again, maybe that reflects the rabbi's, anxiety or whatever, discomfort around execution. Anyway, if avoda overrides Shabbos, it's like the transitive axiom of inequality. Avoda is greater than Shabbos. Now, executing somebody is greater than avoda. How do you know that? You have to take a Kohen away from the altar if he committed a capital crime to execute him, even if that means that the avoda will not take place, as Tosus says in the Bavli, even if he's the only Kohen to do the avoda. You take him away to execute him and you don't give primacy to the avoda. So here's the transitive axiom. Avoda is greater than Shabbos because you do the avoda on Shabbos. Executing is greater than the avoda because you'll execute somebody even if it means that it interrupts the avoda. So if executing is greater than avoda, and avoda is greater than Shabbos, executing should be greater than Shabbos. So Shabbos, avoda dochasa. So if avoda is greater than Shabbos and pushes it off, so certainly executing should override Shabbos. So why not? Here's the basis of how you know you can't execute on Shabbos. The Shabbos, my time, or why? It says, do not make a fire in all of your places where you dwell. And it says, these shall be for the laws of judgment for generations, wherever you dwell. And that's talking about executing murderers. So the same way the second B'chomash Posechem is executing murderers. When it says don't burn a fire, it's in the context of executing for a Beis Din. Don't do the punishment of Sreifa, the execution of Sreifa, and don't do it on Shabbos. So the verse is explicit, you don't execute on Shabbos, even though you have a Kal V'chomer. So you don't execute on Shabbos. And presumably without explaining why, the Demurrer asked, never answered, why don't we just take a pause? Deliberations on Friday, continue the deliberations on Sunday. It's not Inui Hadin because you haven't ruled yet that the guy is liable. Maybe he's going to come off innocent. And then you'll execute him on Monday. So it didn't answer that question, why you can't take a break in the deliberations. But assuming you can't, then you can't have the Gemara din on Shabbos and execute the next day because that's Halanas Hadin, and you can't execute on Shabbos. Okay, so that's what the Yerushalmi says is the basis for not doing it on Erev Shabbos. Okay, we now turn to the Bavli, Lamed Hey. We pick up at the very bottom of Lamed Dal and Amud Bet. And here we go. Dini nefashos tani b'yom. So capital crimes are only in the day. We learned that monetary cases can start in the day and end at night. Minani mili, where do you know that capital crimes have to everything be in the day? Even the end of it has to be in the day. This is about the people that sin for Baal Peor. And it says, and you shall sort of suspend them, hang them to God opposite the sun. So you're hanging them. It's the Gemar din of Dini nefashos, and it's neged hashamesh. It's opposite the sun in the day. So not only does the Chilas din have to be in the day, the Gemar din has to be in the day as well. How do you know that this means to suspend them, to hang them, and that's what you do after you execute? So this is talking about the Givonim when there was a famine, and it was because of what Shaul's family had done to the Givonim, and the Givonim demanded that 7 of Shaul's sons be executed and hung and hanged. Okay, so it says that they were hanged or they were suspended. Givat Shaul. And the verse says, she took the sackcloth, and she basically used the sackcloth to cover them up. But it means that they were exposed, and they were exposed for everybody to see. And therefore, therefore, anyway, you see that the word hokah means to sort of like to hang them and to suspend them. Okay, now since we learned this pasuk, these psukim, we're going to just interpret it. God said to Moshe, "Kachas kol shei am," and says, "V'okasam Lashem negad hashamesh." Like the pasuk is a funny pasuk. It says, "Take all the heads of the tribes, and then hang them." in front of God. And then it says Moshe spoke to the heads, to the Rashim, and said, judge all the people. So were the heads being executed, or were they judging? So how do you interpret it? So the people sin, but how did the leaders sin? Of course, the leaders could have sinned because they let the people sin, because they didn't educate the people better. But anyway, the point is, why does the simple sense of the verse sound like you're going to execute the leaders? So Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Amar L'Kadosh Baruch Hu L'Moshe, Chalek lehem batei dinim. No. Speak to the leaders and not hang the leaders. Speak to the leaders, create a lot of courts, and have the leaders judge the people, and have them, have the leaders hang the guilty people. Okay? My time. Now, why do you have to have many courts? Why can't you all do it in one big court? You don't judge two cases at the same, capital crimes on the same day. That's only if they're two separate death penalties and two separate crimes. If it's one death penalty and the exact same crime, you can hear multiple cases in the same day. So why do they have to have multiple courts? Just have one big court. The end of the verse says God's anger will turn away. He'll say you are setting up all these courts. You're trying to impose order. You're dealing with defending God's honor, and that will help abate God's anger. Okay, anyway, from all of that, we learned that the Gemara din is also biyom. Now, dinei mamnis gomi b'biyom. Now the issue about whether you can finish it on the same day. Monetary cases you can finish on the same day. Capital cases you can finish on the same day for innocence. But for guilt, you have to sleep on it and wait till the next day. We saw even earlier, even if you came up with a new argument for guilt and the vote didn't change, you have to sleep on it another day. Minani Mili, where do you know this from? This is, of course, about Yeshayahu bemoaning the perversion of the justice in Israel and in Jerusalem. I used to be filled with justice. Tzedek yalim ba, righteousness slept in the city. And now murderers sleep there. So the drasha is that it used to be that you would let the judgment sleep over, and that would ensure that it would be tzedek, that it would be a righteous judgment, because it would sleep. You would sleep on it. Now you judge in the same day, and the court, is turning into murderers. You're executing people without giving them due time and due process, and without sleeping. You're not. So you now are like you are murderers. So you see, you have to sleep on, especially if you're going to be taking somebody's life. The Rav Amar Mehacha. Rav says from here, Ishru Chamotz. So the verse is like defend the oppressed, but we're going to read it the following way. Ishru Dayan, praise the judge, Shechametz et dino, that lets his judgment leaven, gives it time to percolate and so on. And that's where he learns it. Now, of course, praise doesn't mean it's required. So, the earlier drasha is more powerful, calls them a murderer if they don't do it. Anyway, the idach, the other one would say, what do you do with the pasuk Ishru Chamotz? Ishru Chamotz v'lo chometz. Come and defend the oppressed and not the oppressor, which basically means that if somebody, like the way Tosfos says, it's hard to know the exact parameters. The Tosfos says, let's say somebody did personal injury to someone. So he's coming to get justice. And the other person says, well, the guy owes me $1 million. So you first hear the case of personal injury, because that's the oppressed. And then you go ahead and hear his claim that he's owed a lot of money by the guy he beat up. Okay. And the one who learns it from Ishru Chamotz, what do you do from the pasuk? I used to be filled with justice. Rabbi Linzer, like Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Yitzchak. Kol tanis shemalini bos hatzedakah. Any fast day that they would let the charity sleep over. So ki'ilu shofech tamim. It's like you committed murder. So what Rashi explains it is on a fast day that would start in the morning. So at night people would be eating, and one of the things that they would do, fast days about tshuva, and therefore you would get people to, give tzedakah, and we're going to see in a minute that tzedakah is in the concrete form of food that you would then give to the poor at night. It wasn't the fasting yet; it was the nighttime, and therefore, so if you give tzedakah, then you've done what you're supposed to. Milesi mishpat. But if tzedek yalim ba, if you let the tzedakah sleep over and wait to give the tzedakah till the next morning, then meratzchim. It's like you killed the poor people because they're going hungry and they're dependent on this food. That's only things like bread and dates, which they are, is very satiating, and that they can eat immediately. Aval bezuze money, chiti v'sari, and wheat and barley, which is not readily edible. So in those cases, if that's all you were collecting, leislan ba, it's not as big of a deal. Letting it sleep over, because it's not like you're depriving them of some immediate sustenance. Okay, so anyway, that's where you know that you let the judgment sleep over. And therefore we don't do it on Erev Shabbos because we can't finish it on Shabbos. So the Bavli is going to deal with the issue the Yerushalmi didn't, which is why not just take a day recess for Shabbos? So my time, what's the reason? Mishum delo efshar, because you can't do it on Erev Shabbos. Hechi lavid, what do you want to do? Begin the case on Friday, and finish it on Friday. That's okay if you find him innocent, but maybe you'll find a reason to say he's guilty. And then you'll have to let the judgment sleep over, because if you want to find him guilty, you can't execute him the next day. You have to wait another day and finish the judgment on the following day. We learned that you have to let it sleep. You have to sleep on it. So where were we? You have to sleep on it and finish the judgment the next day. So you can't finish the judgment on Friday. The dining b'mali shabsa v'ligmei b'shabsa. How about judging on Friday and finishing the judgment on Shabbos? Now we all know you can't execute on Shabbos, but first we're going to suggest you execute on Shabbos. Maybe execute him on Shabbos. No, Shabbos. No, executing doesn't override Shabbos. We saw that discussed in the Yerushalmi. We'll see it discussed in the Bavli in a minute. Now we're taking that for granted. Fine. So you can't just immediately finish it on Shabbos. Okay, but why not do this? Finish the judgment on Shabbos and execute him Saturday night. No. No. It says that the Gemar din has to be by Yom and the execution has to be by Yom. So you can't wait till Sunday morning, because that's Inoy Hadin. Well, we're going to say that. We haven't said that yet. Excuse me, I'm running ahead of myself. The Ligmei Ladini B'Shabsa, V'Liktele B'Chad B'Shabsa, finish the judgment on Shabbos and execute him on Sunday. So no, Nimsa Tameanesdi, no, you're anguishing his judgment. As long as the judgment is not over, it's not Inoy Hadin. Okay, because he thinks he might be found innocent. But once it was ruled that he was guilty, very much different, than in the States here, you have to go through a decade because of all the appeals process, which is one way of going about it, which is trying to save a life. But here, the Gemara's sort of approach is that once he's found guilty, you try to execute him that same day. Otherwise, you're creating this long anguish of his death sentence hanging over him. Okay, so you can't execute him Saturday night because you have to execute in the day. You can't wait till Sunday morning, because if you go through the night, that's Inoy Hadin. You're waiting till the next day, and you're creating this anguish of having the judgment against him, and then executing him. But then it finally asks the question that we've all wanted to ask, which is take a day recess. Start Friday, continue Sunday. Okay, so it says, so why don't we start it on Friday and continue it on Sunday and finish it on Sunday? No, we're afraid that they will forget their arguments and their arguments for the guy's defense. So we do not want to go on recess in the middle of a trial. So even though there's a court record of everything everybody argued, pro and con, what's the concern? They'll forget. They'll just reread the record. So the Gemara says, no. We write what they said with their mouths. We write the arguments that they said. But liba de inchi, but we don't know what they were thinking. And there's a little play on words. The heart of people, inchi, it's the same word, but it means you forget. People forget what they were thinking. So we wrote down what they said. But if you take a break, you're going to forget all of the arguments you had in your head and all the nuances. And therefore, we're afraid that will work out to hurt this person's interests. And therefore, we do not go on a recess, even for one day. Okay. Therefore, there's no way, and we cannot start it on Friday. Now the Gemara gets to the same thing we saw in the Yerushalmi, except it does it in a much longer way, which is maybe you should make an argument that you could execute on Shabbos. But we're going to start from a slightly different point. Rish Lakish said to Rabbi Yochanan, the take first mace mitzvah dochas Shabbos mikavachomer. Let's say that if you have a mace mitzvah, a body that nobody is burying, and there's a mitzvah for everybody to bury that person, let's say that's such an important principle to bury that you would even do it on Shabbos. Okay, where should you make such an argument? So it sounds like this. Okay, avoda overrides Shabbos. Again, this is going to be transitive axiom of inequality. Avoda is greater than Shabbos. First, meis mitzvah dochasa, but burying a meis mitzvah, that takes precedence even over avoda. So this structure of the argument is avoda is greater than Shabbos. Meis mitzvah is greater than avoda, takes precedence. So meis mitzvah should be greater than Shabbos, and you should do meis mitzvah on Shabbos. Now, where do you see that meis mitzvah takes precedence over avoda? We learn it from the word of achoto by a nazir, that a nazir, like a kohen gadol, does not become tamei to immediate family members. But once it says he can't become tamei to immediate family members, and it says his father, why does it have to mention all of them? So the drush is, each extra word there is telling you this family member he can't become tamei to, but he can become tamei to a meis mitzvah. Even if becoming tamei to a meis mitzvah not only violates his nazirus, but would go violate other things. He would be a nazir and a kohen, and not only a kohen, but a kohen gadol, and not only a nazir and a kohen gadol, but somebody going to do a big mitzvah. Nevertheless, it's relatives he can't be matame to, but he has to be matame to a meis mitzvah. Why do you have to say all those words? Let's say this Nazir Kohen Gadol was also doing these two big mitzvot, the two positive mitzvot that you get kares for. They're so important if you don't do them. Bris Milah and Korban Pesach. So you would think all of those things should say, take care of that stuff and don't violate your kedusha of Kohen Gadol, of Nazir, prevent yourself from doing these mitzvot just for the sake of a meis mitzvah. The shamash shemeis lo meis. So if you heard a relative, the guy heard a relative died, yachal yitama, maybe he should become tamei. Talmud lo amarta lo yitama. No, for a relative you don't become tamei. But yachal kashem shein matami lachloto, maybe the same way he wouldn't do it for his sister. Kachein matami for meis mitzvah, he wouldn't be matami for meis mitzvah. Talmud Lomar villa ulachoto. No, the word is expert. Didn't have to say it to tell you lachoso hudeina matami. He's not matami for his sister. Avol matami lemeis mitzvah. He would become tamei for meis mitzvah, even if it would mean violating his kedusha of kahuna and kohen gadol and nazir and preventing him from doing a pesach and doing a bris milah. Anyway, you see therefore that meis mitzvah overrides avoda. Here he is; he's a kohen gadol. He's going to be tamei, and he's not going to do the avoda because of this. So meis mitzvah is greater than avoda. Avoda is greater than Shabbos. And again, Tosfos points out, even if he's the only available kohen, and the avoda really has to come to a stop, and therefore by a kal v'chomer, by a transitive axiom, meis mitzvah should override Shabbos. Okay, so it says, where were we? Meis mitzvah Shabbos. So if Shabbos is pushed away from avoda, avoda is greater than Shabbos. Enu din should take first meis mitzvah dochasa. How much more so should meis mitzvah, which is greater than avoda, push away Shabbos? And you should do first meis mitzvah on Shabbos. So that's Reish Lakish's question to Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan says back. No. The counter proof is, again, so funny. At least in the Yerushalmi, it was called Ritzichas mitzvah. Here it's just called Ritzicha, which we translate as murder, but it means execution. Execution will prove. Shedochas avoda, you execute a kohen, even if it means that the avoda, it overrides the avoda. He won't be available to do the avoda. Deina dochas Shabbos, but you don't execute on Shabbos. So you see, some types of things can override the avoda, like execution, and not override Shabbos. And the same is true by meis mitzvah. It overrides the avoda, but it doesn't override Shabbos. Now, shedochas avoda v'nedochas Shabbos. So now Reish Lakish says back, and this is where the Yerushalmi began. Ritzicha gufa tidches Shabbos mikal v'chomer. Fine, let's execute people on Shabbos based on the same kal v'chomer. If avoda is greater than Shabbos, because you do the avoda in the base of mikdash on Shabbos, and nevertheless executing somebody is more important than the avoda. So Shabbos, so Shabbos, which avoda overrides, it's pushed away from avoda. So if you execute, and that takes precedence over avoda, and avoda takes precedence over Shabbos, execution should take precedence over Shabbos, and you should execute on Shabbos. So Reish Lakish says, don't tell me it's a counter evidence, it's the same point. I'll say bury a meis mitzvah on Shabbos and execute somebody on Shabbos. So how do you know not to do that? Rava says, Kfar Paska Tana de Rabbi Shmuel. Now, the Tana of the Bei Rabbi Shmuel already learned out, sort of cut the rule, already learned out from a verse that you don't execute on Shabbos, to go against your kal v'chomer. What's the verse? Tana de Rabbi Shmuel. Lo sevaresh b'chol moshvosechem. Do not burn a fire in all your dwelling places. Ma Talmud Lomar. What is this teaching you? So the Gemara interrupts. Ma Talmud Lomar. What's it teaching you? Ila Rabbi Yossi l'lav yatzas. Ila Rabbi Nosson l'chalik yatzas. It's telling you about the nature of making a fire on Shabbos. There's a debate. If you make a fire on Shabbos, according to one opinion, it's a negative prohibition, but it's not death penalty, which is shocking. And that's why the Torah had a separate pasuk of don't make a fire, to tell you it's not the death penalty. It's an independent prohibition. The other said no, to tell you that each malacha is distinct. That's lechalik. Lelav means only a negative prohibition, not death penalty. Lechalik means to make each malacha distinct. And for every separate malacha, if you do it b'shogeg, you bring a separate korban. So it makes one malacha that's distinct to say every malacha is distinct. That's lechalik. Okay? Kidatanya, havara lelav yatzah. Steve Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi says making a fire was said a special verse to tell you it's a simple negative prohibition. Rabbi Nosson omer lechalik yatzah. No, it's to make it distinct. Every malacha is distinct. So that's why you need the verse. No, Elam Rava is fine. That wasn't our question. Tana Moshvos Kashamle. The question is, why do you need the verse? You need the verse to tell you this idea of fire. But why did the verse use the word in all your dwelling places? Moshvos Ma Talmud Lomar. Why does it say your dwelling places? Now, you don't have to tell me that Shabbos applies everywhere. Of course, Shabbos applies everywhere. Michti. Let's take a look. Shabbos Chovas Agufi. Shabbos is a personal obligation. It's not based on agriculture. And obviously that applies everywhere, in the land and out of the land. So Moshe was to cause Rahman Alamli. Why does it have to say that don't make a fire wherever you dwell? So Mishum Rabbi Shmuel Amar Talmid Echad. So one Talmud said in the name of Rabbi Shmuel, Lefi Shenemar, because since the verse says Kiya B'ish Chet Mishpat Mavis V'Humas, if a person has a death penalty, he gets put to death. Shomeani Bein B'Chol Bein B'Shabbos. Maybe you can execute somebody even on Shabbos. This is exactly our question. Maybe you should execute on Shabbos. And what do I learn from the verse which says that those who desecrate Shabbos are put to death, which obviously you're not supposed to execute on Shabbos. So b'shar malacha chutz misas based in. All right, that's all other cases. But the same way you do avoda on Shabbos, when a basin executes, maybe they do that on Shabbos too. Oh, ein ela fidu misas basin, or maybe it's telling you no, a basin can't execute on Shabbos. And so what about your obligation to execute? That would be in the weekday, but not on Shabbos. Shabbos keeps on going back and forth. On the other hand, maybe it should be on Shabbos. So how do I know? Do you execute on Shabbos or not? Yes, of course, normally it's a prohibition, but maybe we make an exception, like we make an exception by the avoda. So Talmud Lomar, the verse teaches, Lo sevaru eich b'chol moshvosechem. Now, what does that tell you about execution? And somewhere else it says, this should be the law for your generations in all your dwelling places. And this is talking about executing murderers. So based in the same way there, it's about a based in and about executing. Based in here, when it says a fire, it means a fire in the context of executing, like Sreifa. And therefore, it's saying a based in Moshe Vosechem that's executing somebody, you cannot do it on Shabbos. Okay. So now what do we know? We know that you don't execute on Shabbos, even though you have this Kal V'chomer, even though it overrides Avoda, it doesn't override Shabbos. And that's the answer to Reish Lakish. That's how we know you don't bury a Meis Mitzvah on Shabbos. Because even though a Meis Mitzvah is stronger than Avoda, and Avoda is stronger than Shabbos, nevertheless, by comparison to this case of the court execution, you see that just because it's stronger than Avoda doesn't mean that it overrides Shabbos. Okay, so now the Gemara continues. Before we get to the next point in the Gemara, I just want to pause for a moment and read this very interesting Tosfos about taking a Kohen away from the altar in order to execute him. Look at the Tosfos Shenemar Me'im Mizbechi. So it says, "Va'afilu ein sham Kohen roy la'avodas avoda nidches." Even if he's the only Kohen, this is what I was quoting before, you would take him away, which shows that executing overrides avoda. V'im tomen, that Tosfos says, 1 minute. The fact that it overrides to execute him, it's not the importance of executing that interrupts him doing the avoda. If he's a murderer, he is not fit for being a Kohen. So it's not because the need to execute interrupts the avoda. If he's deserving the death penalty, he is not a valid Kohen. A Kohen who murdered cannot give the blessing with the hands. Your hands are filled with blood. The Kolshkein Avoda, if he can't do Birchas Kohanim, certainly he couldn't do the Avoda on the altar itself. So it's not the idea of executing interferes, it's that he's a Pasul Kohen. So very interesting answer. Yesh Lomar, the Al Karchach Chazi. Maybe actually, no. A Kohen who's a murderer really can do the avoda. Dalo meichel avoda. We never see anywhere that if a Kohen who's a murderer, does the avoda, that the avoda is invalid. The korban is pasul. No, the korban would be kosher. He would not desecrate the avoda. And the fact that he doesn't do birchas kohanim, of course, that should be less important, less weighty, than the avoda. But it's a stringency. It's not that if he actually would do, he really is kosher to do the avoda, to do nesias kapayim. It doesn't invalidate it. And the fact that we don't do it for nesias kapayim is a chumrah. The od yesh lomer, no. Maybe nesias kapayim, for this regard, is weightier. Maybe he really is pasul for birchas kohanim and not for the avoda. The od yesh lomer shani nesias kapayim lifi shahard biyadav. He murdered with his hands. First, your hands are filled with blood. The prosecuting attorney, the hands that committed murder, cannot be the hands that bless. You reach out your hands, I'll cover my eyes. Of course, it's funny. The avodah is also done with the hands, but it doesn't emphasize the hands, right? The birchas kohanim is called nesias kapayim. It's all focused on the raising of the hands, and therefore maybe it's specifically pasul for that. Okay, anyway, here we have the answer why we know you don't execute on Shabbos. Now we have one final challenge to this. So it says like this. Amar Bai, said Abai, Hashtad Marta, now that you said, Ein Ritzicha Dochs Shabbos, Ein Ritzicha Dochs Avoda Mikal V'chomer. Let's now go, now that we've established you don't execute on Shabbos, let's now go and argue, apply that back to the issue about executing to interfere with the avoda. If Shabbos is stronger than execution, and we know avoda is stronger than Shabbos, then avoda should be stronger than execution, and you shouldn't interfere with the avoda to execute. Okay? If execution doesn't interfere with Shabbos, it shouldn't interfere with doing the avoda. Mikal v'chomer. Shabbos, which is weaker than avoda, and nevertheless, execution doesn't interfere with Shabbos. Avoda, which is weightier, that overrides Shabbos. So execution is less than Shabbos. Shabbos is greater than execution. Avoda is greater than Shabbos. So clearly, avoda is greater than execution, and you shouldn't execute and interfere with the avoda. Nice kavachomer. Now the problem is we have a verse. The verse says you do interfere with Yavoda. So Ella hadichsi mimi zechiti kachenu lamus. What about that verse? Then I'll say hu korban yachid to lo dachi Shabbos. That means you could take away the kohen to execute him if it's preventing him from bringing a private korban. Okay, because a private korban doesn't override Shabbos. A private korban is weak. But if the kohen is doing a public korban, the avoda of like a korban tzibur, then that type of avoda is weighty. It overrides Shabbos. So when that weighty avoda that overrides Shabbos, you shouldn't execute a kohen and interfere with that avoda. The same way you don't interfere with Shabbos. That's a good argument. Okay, so we will pick up with this tomorrow, and we will. Let's just finish it. Okay, let's finish. Let's get the answer. Okay, so Amar Rava, so said Rava, no. I will tell you the following. If you say that the verse will be left to talk, when the verse says executing doesn't interfere with avoda, you want to say, well, that we can say is talking about when it's a personal korban. Well, it says, no, I'll make you I can prove from a similar kavachomer that once you're saying that avoda won't interfere with a public korban, avoda also shouldn't interfere with a personal korban. How do you know that? Here's the kavachomer. You can bring your personal korban on yantiv. So personal korban is greater than yantiv. But yantiv is greater than execution. If you don't execute on Shabbos, the assumption is you don't execute on yantiv. So here's our kal v'chomer. Yantiv is greater than execution. Private korban is greater than yantiv. So private korban is greater than execution, and you won't interfere with a private korban. And then the pasuk isn't talking about anything. So if you use those kal v'chomers, you won't interfere execution of private or public korban. So since that can't be, it must be that actually you do interfere, even a public korban. Okay, korban yachishu dochas a yantiv. So a personal korban which is bigger than overrides yantiv, is greater than yantiv. Certainly, execution shouldn't interfere with it, and therefore you'll have nothing to do with the pasuk. So now Rabbi says, wait, at least you could still have the pasuk talk about a personal korban that according to one opinion. According to the opinion that you don't bring personal korbanos on yantiv, then you're good. You don't have a kal v'chomer. Personal korban isn't stronger than yantiv. So you could say execution doesn't interfere with a public korban, but does interfere with a personal, because a personal korban is weak. It doesn't override yantiv. But if a personal korban can be brought on yantiv, so what can you say? Because now you can use the same. You'll say, okay, execution doesn't interfere with a public korban, and the verse that says you execute the kohen, that's a private korban. But Rabbi says, I'll make you a kal v'chomer that even by a private korban, execution shouldn't interfere. Private korban is greater than yantiv. Yantiv is greater than execution. So private korban is greater than execution. And the verse is left talking with nothing. So it must be when the verse says you execute the kohen, it's talking regardless. Private, public, you always execute. That is weightier than the avoda. So Elamar Rava, rather Rabbi said, Lo mi bailam an darmin darm v'davos craving b'yom tov, da lo mitkayim in the goes without saying, according to what I just said, that if you bring a private korban on yantiv, the verse has to be you're not left with anything about the verse. There's nothing that you would interfere. There's no avoda that if you use your kal v'chomer you would interfere with. Okay, so that proves that you have to put aside the kal v'chomer. Even if you say you don't bring private korbanos on yantiv, and therefore in theory you could say that you don't have a kal v'chomer by a private korban, so execution doesn't interfere with a public korban, and it does interfere with a private korban, and that's the verse. So you'd have a way of explaining the verse. Even in theory, you'd have a way of explaining the verse. Still, I'm going to tell you that execution interferes even with a public korban. How do you know that? Haksiv, the verse says, Me'im mizbechi, my mizbeach, mizbechi amiyuchadli, meaning the one that it's designated for, and the mizbeach is fundamentally designated, umayni tamid. The tamid is the primary thing that you bring on the altar. So it says, my altar, it means the fundamental avoda that you do on the altar, which is the public korban. Even if the kohen is doing a public korban, you interfere and you execute him. So we have this irony. Execution interferes with the kohen doing the avoda, okay? But, and avoda is stronger than Shabbos, but execution is not stronger than Shabbos. You don't execute on Shabbos, you don't bury a mace mitzvah on Shabbos, but you do the avoda on Shabbos, and you do have execution interfering with the avoda and taking the kohen away in order to execute him and not let him do the avoda. Okay, we will pick up with this tomorrow.